All right. Welcome to the deep dive, where we dive deep into the stuff you've given us and help you really get it.
Yeah, you've sent over some pretty interesting excerpts from Writing Academic English by Alice Oshima and Anne Hogue. We're going to take a look and see what kind of key takeaways we can find.
Okay, cool. Now, I know academic writing might not sound like the most exciting thing in the world,
Right.
but honestly, these techniques are super useful for anyone who wants to, organize their thoughts better or even just write a better email. We're going to be looking at how to come up with ideas, how to structure your writing, and how to make sure everything is clear and polished.
What we're really getting at here is that it's about more than just writing essays for school. It's about thinking clearly and communicating well, which are useful skills for anyone to have, right?
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. How do you even come up with ideas in the first place? I mean, sometimes that blank page can be super intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. The book talks about a few pre-writing techniques, and the first one is, well, it's pretty simple, just making a list. It's just a list.
Yep. Sometimes the simplest things are the most effective. The idea is to just quickly jot down any words or phrases that pop into your head when you think about the topic. Don't overthink it. Just get it all out there.
Oh, I see, like a brain dump kind of thing.
Exactly. And what's interesting about lists? It's not just about making a list. It's also about kind of, getting past that inner critic, letting your mind just go wherever it wants. Sometimes the best ideas are hidden beneath the more obvious ones, and this kind of rapid fire approach can help bring those unexpected connections to the surface.
Like in the book, they give the example of food, sports, entertainment, and school as starting points, and then you can make sublists under each one.
Right. Starting broad and then narrowing down can be really helpful for zeroing in on something specific.
Mm.
Like you might start with school and then think about student life and then maybe problems on campus. Just like, that example they give later about finding a focus, that student who was thinking about parking. Oh, yeah, that's a good example of how even a random list can lead to a good idea. And then there's free writing, which I have to say I'm a big fan of, especially when I feel like I'm just all over the place.
I can see why. It's like you're just letting your thoughts flow onto the page without worrying about, grammar or even making sense.
Exactly. No judgment, just right.
The key is to keep writing continuously. Don't stop, just pick a topic and write for a set amount of time. The goal is to get your subconscious mind working and see what kind of crazy connections it makes.
Right. I think the book mentions a specific procedure, right?
Yeah, they say you should start by writing the topic, then just write as much as you can about it, then go back and circle the main ideas that stand out to you. And then
And then free write again, this time focusing on those specific ideas.
exactly. And that student who starts writing about general problems at their college and ends up focusing on the lack of parking spaces, well, that's a perfect example of how this process can work its magic.
Yeah. It's like you're having a conversation with yourself, but on paper.
Hmm.
And then we have clustering, which is a more visual way to brainstorm.
Hmm.
This one reminds me of creating those, what are they called? Mind maps?
Yes, that's a good way to think about it. Clustering is all about organizing your ideas around a central topic. You put the main idea in the middle of the page and then branch out with related concepts and sub-ideas.
Like in the book, they had that example of communication problems with all the different branches coming out of it, like international students' poor verbal skills and Americans being difficult to understand.
Right. Clustering helps you visualize the relationships between ideas and how they all connect to the main topic. So, for someone like our listener who wants to understand things quickly and efficiently, do you think these three techniques are useful?
Oh, absolutely. What's cool is they cater to different learning styles, right? Listing is very straightforward. Free writing is more free-flowing and exploratory, and clustering is great for visual learners.
Exactly. The most important thing is to figure out which method works best for you and use it to, generate ideas and then narrow down to a specific focus for your writing or even just your thinking.
Okay, so now let's say we've brainstormed, we've got a bunch of ideas swirling around, and we've landed on a specific topic. What's next? How do we actually organize all of this into something coherent?
Well, this is where planning and outlining come in. The book emphasizes that once you have a topic, it's super important to organize your thoughts logically. You can even use those lists you created during brainstorming as a starting point.
Right, like that communication problems example we talked about earlier.
Mm.
Those initial lists about the challenges faced by international students and the difficulties understanding Americans, those could actually become the main points for a paragraph or even an essay.
That's a great point. And this leads us to the concept of the topic sentence. The topic sentence is like the anchor of your paragraph. clearly states the main idea that you'll be exploring.
Like in the book, they have the example. One problem that many international students face in the United States is communication with Americans. That's super clear and tells the reader exactly what the paragraph is about.
You can think of it as like almost like a mini thesis statement for your paragraph. It guides both you, the writer, and the reader through the information.
So from there, you would expand on that topic sentence with supporting points and details, right?
Exactly. And the book suggests creating a rough outline. Now, don't worry, this doesn't have to be super detailed or anything.
It's more about getting a basic structure down on paper.
Right. Just something to guide your writing. This principle applies to longer pieces of writing too, like essays. You'd create a more elaborate outline with an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion.
Right. And the thesis statement for an essay, that's like the overall main idea of the entire piece, right? Like the big umbrella statement.
Exactly. It serves the same function as the topic sentence in a paragraph, but for the whole essay. So to connect this back to, well, to the bigger picture, this idea of an outline can be super helpful for anyone who wants to understand information quickly.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like if you can figure out the underlying structure of a long document or a presentation, it's much easier to grasp the main points.
Exactly. The outline acts as a roadmap, making sure that ideas are presented in a logical sequence.
Okay, so we've brainstormed, we've planned, we've even outlined. Now comes the less glamorous part, the polishing stage.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people kind of dread revising and editing, but the book actually breaks it down into two distinct phases, which I think is helpful.
Yeah. It makes it less overwhelming, right? So revising is all about the big picture. It's about looking at the content and organization of your writing. Are your ideas clear? Are they well supported? Do they flow in a logical way?
Like they do that example of revising the paragraph on American classrooms. They check to see if it's really addressing culture shock, if all the sentences are on topic and unified, if there are enough supporting details and examples, if there are good transitions between ideas, and if there's a strong conclusion.
That's a good example of how revision is about way more than just fixing grammar errors. It's about making sure your message is clear and that your writing is doing what it's supposed to do.
It's like if you think about building a house, revising is like checking the blueprint to make sure the foundation is solid and the structure is sound.
That's a great analogy. And then you have editing, which is more about the finer details.
Right. This is where we zoom in on the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling, all those little things that can trip us up.
And the book gives a whole checklist of things to look for, like complete sentences, subject-verb agreement, verb tenses, noun plurals, articles, punctuation, capitalization, word usage, contractions. It's a pretty comprehensive list, but that's because getting these details right can really make a difference in how your writing is perceived.
It's like, go back to the house analogy, editing is like making sure all the windows are sparkling clean and the paint job is flawless.
You got it. Both revising and editing are crucial for producing a polished and professional piece of writing.
Okay, so the book also goes into a lot of detail about essay structure. This is really helpful for understanding how to build a longer piece of writing. It breaks down the essay into three main parts: the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion.
And each part has its own unique role to play, right? The introduction is your chance to grab the reader's attention and then clearly present your main argument, your thesis statement.
Right, that's important. It sets the stage for everything that follows. And they even talk about different ways to approach writing an introduction, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, like what?
Like they mentioned that funnel approach, where you start broad and then gradually narrow it down to your specific thesis statement. And then there's using historical background or surprising statistics, or even starting with a compelling story or anecdote to really hook the reader in.
Yeah, I like that. It's all about finding a way to engage the reader right from the start and make them want to keep reading. But no matter what approach you choose, the thesis statement is still super important. It needs to be clear and focused and tell the reader exactly what you're going to argue.
And it's not just stating the general topic, right?
No, it's about making a specific claim about that topic. The book even points out that a well-crafted thesis statement can actually preview the subtopics you're going to discuss, or even indicate the overall structure of your essay.
That's helpful for the reader to know what to expect. And speaking of structure, they talk about different essay patterns, right? Like, logical division seems like a pretty basic one.
Yeah. Logical division is basically just breaking your main topic down into smaller subtopics and dedicating a paragraph to each one. It's super useful for explaining different aspects of a topic in a clear and organized way.
Like if you're talking about the causes of something or the different types of something or the advantages and disadvantages of something, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And your thesis statement should give the reader a heads up about how many subtopics you're going to discuss and what they are.
Okay. So to keep all these different parts of your essay flowing smoothly, they talk about the importance of using transition signals.
Yes. Those are key for creating coherence. They show how your ideas connect to each other, whether you're adding information, contrasting ideas, or showing cause and effect. And they can be single words, phrases, or even whole clauses.
So it's like putting up signposts to guide the reader through your essay.
Exactly. Makes it much easier to follow your line of reasoning. And then finally, we reach the conclusion. It's not just about slapping on at the end and calling it a day, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's your chance to really drive home your main points and leave a lasting impression on the reader.
They mention a few important purposes of the conclusion: signaling that the essay is over, summarizing your main points or restating your thesis, and then offering a final thought or maybe even a call to action. It should give a sense of closure to your whole argument. And, for those more formal essays, they even talk about the importance of outlining.
Yeah, they do. And that makes sense for a longer, more complex piece of writing. It helps you create a really clear and organized structure before you even start writing.
Okay, so moving on. They briefly introduce a couple of other essay patterns, like cause and effect.
Right, which explores why something happens and what the consequences are.
Yeah, and they talk about two main ways to organize this type of essay. You can either use block organization, where you discuss all the causes first and then all the effects, or you can use chain organization, where one cause leads to an effect, which then becomes the cause of another effect, and so on.
It's like a domino effect, right? And then there's the comparison and contrast essay, which is super useful when you want to analyze how two or more things are similar and different.
Right, and it's not just about describing each thing separately. You have to actually compare and contrast them, highlighting both the similarities and the differences.
And they mention two main organizational patterns for this type of essay too. Block organization, where you discuss all the similarities in one section and all the differences in another, or point-by-point organization, where you alternate between similarities and differences for each point you're comparing.
And just like with other types of essays, using those clear comparison and contrast signal words like similarly, in contrast, or however, is super important for clarity.
Okay, and lastly, they briefly mention argumentative essays, where the goal is to persuade the reader to agree with your point of view.
And what's unique about this type of essay is that you have to engage with counterarguments, right? You have to acknowledge the opposing viewpoints and then try to refute them.
Right. You're making a case for your position. And, they talk about different organizational patterns for argumentative essays too. But no matter what structure you choose, the key is to present your own arguments convincingly while also addressing the other side of the issue.
Exactly. And that shows you've thought critically about the topic and makes your argument stronger in the end.
Now, a really crucial skill that underlies all of this effective writing and communication is the ability to work with sources correctly. And the book touches on two key techniques: paraphrasing and summarizing.
And these are super important, not just to avoid plagiarism, but also to show that you understand the material and can integrate it into your own writing in a seamless way.
So paraphrasing is basically restating information from a source in your own words while keeping the meaning the same.
Right. It's not just about swapping out a few synonyms. It's about really demonstrating that you understand the ideas and can express them in your own voice. They have a whole process outlined in the book. Understanding the original text, taking notes, writing the paraphrase from your notes without looking back at the original, and then checking your paraphrase against the original to make sure it's accurate and that you haven't accidentally plagiarized anything.
And then summarizing is similar, but it's even more concise. It's like distilling the main points of a source into a shorter version.
Yep. It's about capturing the essence of the original text without getting bogged down in all the details. And both paraphrasing and summarizing are really valuable skills for anyone who needs to process information from multiple sources and synthesize it into their own work.
Absolutely. And whether you're paraphrasing or summarizing, it's crucial to always properly cite your sources.
That's a non-negotiable. Giving credit where credit is due is essential for academic integrity and intellectual honesty. The book even has some examples of what not to do, showing how even slight changes to the wording or failing to cite properly can still be plagiarism.
So to wrap it all up, we've taken a pretty thorough look at the process of academic writing as it's presented in Writing Academic English. We've covered everything from brainstorming to outlining, from revising and editing to the different ways you can structure an essay. We even touched on those essential skills of paraphrasing and summarizing.
And the key takeaway here is that effective writing isn't usually a one and done kind of thing. It's a process, an iterative cycle of generating ideas, organizing them, writing, revising, and editing. And those core principles of clear organization, using strong topic sentences, and crafting a strong thesis statement, well, those are essential for any kind of communication, whether it's a written document, a presentation, or even just a casual conversation.
And for our listener who's all about understanding information quickly and efficiently, I think the biggest takeaway is that these techniques can really empower you. It's not just about writing perfect essays. It's about having the tools to think more clearly and communicate your ideas more effectively.
Absolutely. So, here's something to think about. How might you use just one of these techniques, like brainstorming or revising, in your next communication task? Maybe it's a big presentation you're working on or an important email you need to send. How could applying these principles make a difference in how your message is received?
It's a great question to consider. We encourage you to go back to the book, explore these techniques in more depth, and see what really resonates with you. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.